Hey, what's everybody? What's up, everybody? See, I already messed it up already, man. I'm Jeff. That's Walker. This is Jeff D Sports, and this is college football week 8 winners and losers. Hey, what's going on? Hey, Walker, thanks for being here, man. First of all, like I can't believe we're through 8 weeks of college football already. It makes me kind of sad.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you've got 4 weeks, or we've got a month of regular season football left, and
Oh,
then you have to do like the gap where there's going to be college football on, but it's like you have to really love the sport to watch Eastern Michigan play Central Michigan in a bowl game or something like that. So that's kind of where we're getting to. Like, I mean, we've got a month left of football, so embrace it and enjoy it, because after that, then it's going to be a long wait until we get back to this point.
well, that's funny you bring that up, and I kept telling everybody like through this season, this has been a really good season. Like I think it's been a really good college football season so far, and these these actual like regular season games to me have replaced the bowl games because just like you said, I used to watch every bowl game and you get up for them, and now like I look more forward to like I'm looking to this Tennessee Georgia game more than I am like the Rose Bowl is what I'm getting at.
Right.
You know, all the early season stuff, Notre Dame, Ohio State at the beginning of the season, all these little things like I'm looking forward to those way more than I am the bowl games now outside of the playoffs. So, it's a good point. So yeah, it's going quick. But overall it's been a good season. And overall, like I don't know, the top 15 teams are really good.
Yeah.
What do you think about the season? We'll just kind of reboot here. What do you think about the season to date? How do you feel about it?
I'll say this
I know I'm
too
kind
on
of
the
catching
season.
you off guard with
Yeah,
that.
no, I know. I'll say this about the season moving quick and slow or whatever else. Like, I think it'll slow down some when we get the conferences expanded, because I think that a lot of these like cupcake games are going to go away. Like, I don't think like because I think that's part of what makes the season go by for schools like Ole Miss and Ohio State is you're an SEC and a Big Ten school, and you really only have like 8 games on the schedule right now where you're going to like actually
Yeah.
play someone who matters. And like in Ole Miss's case, like one of your SEC games is Vanderbilt. So really you don't even have 8.
Yeah.
And so I think that when you have so few games right now that like matter to your individual team in terms of like where the end goal is, and like when you go in and the results already almost determined, it almost makes it go faster because you're less inclined to watch. And so like I still
Yeah.
watch every minute of Ole Miss Vanderbilt or Ole Miss Central Arkansas because I'm a sicko. But I think that for the casual fan, that's what makes it go so fast. But
That's a good point.
yeah, for this season, I like the fact that we have some of the in between, like the 10 to 20, like if you ranked every program from a brand standpoint, a lot of the 10 to 25 teams are really, really good this year. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
Oklahoma State's awesome again. TCU's really good, really good this year. Ole Miss has been good up to this point. UCLA is really good. Oregon's really good. So I just think, outside of the Blue Bloods, there's a lot of teams that are really good, and it's going to make for really compelling actual bowl matchups, which I think will make bowls more intriguing than they usually are, just because, like, in the Alamo Bowl, you get Oregon, Oklahoma State, or Oregon, Texas, or something like that. Like, that's a game where people are like, oh, those are two massive
Yeah.
brands going head to head at 8 o'clock at night on a Wednesday. Like, I'm gonna watch that. Like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think I think it's been watchable from that standpoint.
I think it's been extremely good. Like I was surprised, Saturday, I was lucky enough Saturday, things just worked out that I was able to watch a lot of football. And I'm like, these games are surprisingly good. There's these teams are surprisingly good. Like if you really like, just like I'm like you, like I really like watch the games. I'm not judging anybody that doesn't. You got shit to do. So like you just look at the scoreboard and you're like, but you really watch the games. Like there's a lot of good teams out there. There's like Texas is a good team that has 3 losses.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they're a nobody's signing up to play them, and yet they also have 3 losses. You're a fan of Ole Miss. They took a tough loss. They've got 1 loss. I complain about
Everything is
Ohio
still
State.
everything's still out
Yeah,
in front of them.
yeah, I complain about Ohio State winning by 44, but like if you really watch the game, there's things there to complain about. Like outside of like the margin of victory. So yeah, it's been pretty cool so far. Like I'm excited about the what's left in the season. So we'll jump into the winners and losers here. I mean, that's kind of what this show's all about. So let's talk about some of your winners from week 8.
All right, so I'll start here, and this one's going to take a little bit of nuance. And once I explain it, it's kind of obvious. But I'm going to start with South
These are
Carolina.
my favorite ones.
I'm going to start with South Carolina.
Okay.
You beat a Texas A&M team that's now 3-4 overall. They've been a massive disappointment, but I think the important thing for South Carolina is like these are the types of games that you win when you're building something special. And I think if you watch what Shane Beamer's doing now, it's kind of about knocking down doors. They'd lost like 6 straight to Kentucky. 2 weeks ago, they go to Lexington and they win that game, and it's not even really particularly close. You come home and you have the bye week, and you sell out that A&M game that week of the bye week. And so then you come in and it's okay. We're now playing Texas A&M at home, a team that we're 0-8 against. And if I remember right, their last trip to Columbia beat South Carolina 49-3. So you're hosting a team that you have never beaten in your school's history. You've already broken down the door of the whole Kentucky thing that's been haunting your program, and it's been the reason you can't compete in the East. Now you've got to beat another SEC team and knock down that door in order to advance the program. And not only did they do it again, but they won the coin toss, took the ball, and returned the opening kick for a touchdown, and just sent that place into an absolute madhouse with 14 minutes and 50 seconds left in the first quarter. And that type of stuff to me, like it's hard not to be romantic about that type of stuff because it's so cool to watch it live on TV. And like for me, like I had split screen between TCU, Kansas State, and South Carolina A&M, and like South Carolina returns the opening kick for a touchdown, then forces a fumble and kicks a field goal. And then A&M comes back on the field and you intercept an out route and you run it back to the 5-yard line and punch in a touchdown. And with like 10 minutes left in the first quarter, you're up 17-0. And like, that's just the type of stuff that builds momentum. It carries from one week to the next because you're doing things that the program hasn't done before. And that's how you eventually become a upper echelon program in college football. So props to South Carolina for continuing to knock down doors. And continuing to build. I'm a big Beamer ball fan. Like all jokes aside, like I love Shane Beamer. I believe in what he's building. And sometimes you watch a head coach and then you watch kind of the videos after the game, and head coaches have that indescribable factor that you can just tell really, really good. He's got it. He's got it he's got it overwhelmingly.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. Obviously I watched his I watched his dad, like, the journey, at Virginia Tech was I can remember, I want to say it was 94, could have been 95. I think it was 94 when they beat Miami, and it's hard to describe now what that was like, but it's everything that you're saying. It's like they put their foot in the door, but then they never let up. Virginia Tech was great, for 20-25 years in a row, but at some point you have to like take that step. And when you want to talk about coaches, a team that I had on one of my biggest winners is Oregon. And not only did they play great, they played efficient. Bo Nix has been one of the best players in the nation for a month now, which is pretty cool to see. I got some stuff to say about the transfer portal later and what we learned. But also what you said about head coaches, game day was there. So you got a lot of insight. You got the interview with Lanning, their first year head coach there at Oregon. And I'm like, all I could take away from it was like, I think every kid in the country should want to play for this guy. Like he checks every box that a college, football head coach would have. Not only does he have the game plan, the scheme, but he's also just got the attitude, the charisma. Like he feels like a guy that will walk into a living room and get a kid to come to his program. So just to piggyback on what you said about the great head coaches are just different. that's why Oregon is on my list of winners this week. I thought the entire package. I think they got themselves back into. I said this. I think they've jumped Clemson in my
Mhm.
mind. I think that they've jumped Clemson. If they both went out, I think Oregon's jumped Clemson in my mind. And I think their head coach is an absolute rock star and that they're in good shape for the next 10 years.
We judged them so fast for how they performed in
Yeah.
Atlanta in week 1, and all they did was turn around after that and they just get better every week,
Yes.
and the top 10 team come to your building for your next really big test, and, like, you really kind of just dominate the game from the word
Oh,
go,
yeah.
and so they're just winning. Like, I mean, we judged them for matching up against what is a current superpower in the sport, and that
Yeah.
was not fair. I mean, you can only play who's in front of you, I get it, so we have to judge you based on what you do in week 1, but we haven't given them enough credit for basically just turning around and doing nothing but win after the fact.
Well, and that's what I said. Like schedule is so big in college football. If Oregon plays almost anybody else week 1, they don't lose. And right now we're talking about they're
Yeah,
a playoff team, but they play Georgia. So
right?
that and it
Yeah,
is what it is. But I
exactly.
think that's gonna I think that's kind of been erased. I think it's gonna be forgiven. And I like I was completely wrong. I think they've overtaken USC for the Pac-12, playoff
Yeah.
team in my
We'll
opinion.
see. Yeah, and we'll see how they handle, like, they've gotta play Utah, and they get it
Yeah.
soon, so, like, that's obviously an advantage, but, we'll see how they handle kinda, like, the physical tests, like, and
And
we'll
they
be
got
able to honestly
smacked.
directly compare
Yeah,
kinda like
they got smacked 2 weeks in
yeah,
a row last year by Utah. So but as of now,
yep,
yeah, they're riding high. So what other winners you got?
absolutely. Yeah, so TCU again. TCU
Oh,
again.
how
The cardiac frogs. Just this is now 2 consecutive weeks, and this speaks to coaching
they
as
should change
well.
their name to the
They went in the
Cardiac Frogs
locker
because
room.
that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. They went in the locker room and down, I guess it was down 14-ish at halftime against Oklahoma State, made adjustments and found a way to come back and win a football game. And this week, you know, you really honestly saw it starting late second quarter because Kansas State just the offense completely died. Like TCU found something defensively and it was like we can do this and it's going to work. So then they do it. They knock the Howard kid out of the game. He came back later, and then in the second half they forced a multitude of turnovers. The run game got going. A sold out Carter Stadium got rocking, and from that point, you knew once TCU cut it to like 28-24 or whatever, yeah, 28-24, you were like, oh, they're fixing to do this. Like there's just so much time left. And they came out of the locker room, took the ball to start the second half, and went on like a 7.5 minute drive and threw like 2 passes. And it was like, oh, they're imposing their will. Like they came out of the locker room ready to roll, and it's exactly what they did. They did what good teams do, which is find a way to win. And now they get to a lighter part of the schedule,
Yeah.
which, to be honest, in that conference right now, there's no light part of the schedule, but you would rather play the West Virginias and the Texas Techs than you would Baylor's and the Texases.
It,
So
if
we
you have
get
to
those
if
two.
Yeah, that's funny you said that because I'm going to piggyback on it again. So on my list, not only did you had TCU, but I just had the Big 12. Oklahoma State, rebounded from the loss last week. They're a good team. They outlasted Texas. Yours just plain and simple didn't have a great game, but I
Yeah.
this kid is basically 6 months out of where he should have graduated high school. So like he's fine. Like Texas is in good shape. But Oklahoma State rebounded. They didn't lose 2 in a row. They won that game at the same time, like you said, everything you said about TCU. I thought the Big 12 looked good Saturday. And if you're watching, like, again, if you're watching Clemson and Syracuse, not that wasn't a good game, but I think the Big 12 as a conference has kind of like put their foothold in as the probably the third best conference, fourth best. I think honestly they're better than the Big Ten right now. Like if we're being completely
Yeah,
honest. So
they don't have the team like Ohio State that I think can go and
right, they don't right, but TCU, like, not that they don't have the brand, but they're undefeated. They're really good. And I think that the Big
Also, do you
12,
know how hard it is to get up? You know how hard it is to get up for a rivalry game followed by 4 consecutive ranked opponents and win all
yeah,
5?
right,
Like, that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. Like, the
yep.
people don't understand how hard it is to go undefeated in this sport, and so when
Oh my
you get up
goodness,
and you have to and you take your head coach who just left your in town, not even in state, like, in the same city, left your rival within the city, you have to go back over and play at SMU in front of a sold out crowd in a hugely emotional game for everyone involved, and then you have to play 4 ranked opponents after that,
yeah,
one of which was on the road in front of their first sellout in like a bazillion years, and game day was on campus, and you still find a way to win. Like, it's
yeah.
so hard to continue to get up after for emotional game and emotional game and emotional game, and they keep doing
Yep.
it every single week. At some point, they get the benefit of the doubt.
No, no, and I totally agree. That's why I said, like, after when the day was over and just like watching the games, I was like, I felt really good about where the Big 12's at, as opposed to like the Big 10 this year has been like, oh my goodness, like there's two good teams and everybody else is just trying to figure out a way to, you know, survive. Penn State's living on name brand, if we're being honest. Not that they're not a good team, but they're
They're just
essentially
fine.
just, yeah, they're fine, but then they have they have that brand, you know, like you've said it
Yeah.
time and time again. They got the helmet. They've got the helmet,
Yep.
which is a huge advantage. But so I'm feeling good about where the Big 12's at right now. You got any other winners?
This is gonna sound weird given that they lost, but like in a small way, kind of Syracuse, because I think like there's some
Okay.
like you can like legitimize them a little bit. And
Yeah.
I think that, like, coming in, we all expected them to roll over in Death Valley because they hadn't really played anybody and just kinda get beat and drummed, but they were dominant on the line scrimmage for a half. They did a lot of good things on both sides, you know, it was a program that has no experience in prime time and or in the big spotlight, if you get what I'm saying, and they just kind of, for lack of a better they kinda just pissed down their leg, but you know, I still thought it was a win for them from a branding standpoint. Now, what'll be interesting from a test from a test standpoint for them is do they lose the Clemson game twice and come home and lose to Notre Dame just because like of the
Right.
emotion of like blowing that.
If they can rebound, and because we've said it on this show, you've said on your show, I've said on my show, if you beat Notre Dame for some reason, it means so much more.
You
But
know?
if they can rebound and beat, and a Notre Dame team that's playing decent right now, like they're playing, they're an all right team right now. Yeah, if they can rebound and beat them, then they recoup all of that momentum that they had going into that. I think that's a very good point. And honestly, they should. Like
Yeah.
they're a better team than Notre Dame. So I hope I would hate to see them lose two in a row. Everybody's going to dismiss it. And that was a lot of orange on the field. That was a weird looking game.
It
It was
was
kind of tough to watch.
it was because you didn't know who was the home team and who was the away
It was
team.
weird.
But it is one of the rare contests where I came out and I put the team who lost the game on my winners list and the team who won the game on my losers list.
Okay, that's fair. I also have the team that won the game on my losers list, so I get it. The only other winner I had. This was nothing personal. I thought LSU, with that win over what I think is a good Ole Miss team, and the fact that LSU has, however it turns out, we don't know, but they're still in position to actually win the SEC.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I mean, there's no
they
question.
had to have that victory. They're getting better. I really like their quarterback a lot. I'm glad he transferred, which again I'm going to talk about when what we learned this weekend. So I thought that was so I guess I'm giving, because I thought so much of Ole Miss, I'm giving LSU the credit for beating them, not like, you know what I mean, not the other way around. And they put themselves in position to still win the SEC. So I thought that was a good weekend for LSU overall. As much as I hate to say it, because
Yeah, no, you're
I want
absolutely
Brian Kelly to lose every game he ever coaches.
he is absolutely one of the most underrated coaches in the
He's
country, though.
he's so good. But he's also like He's
Oh,
so
he's a
easy
terrible
to
I'm not a
dislike.
fan at all, but I
Oh my
mean,
god.
we do this thing where he made the playoff and got blown out a bunch at Notre Dame, but I don't think people who, like I don't think people who really or people don't really understand how hard it is to win at Notre Dame. Like,
Oh,
people
he
don't
basically
understand.
didn't lose. Like he never
He would
lost
never
there.
lose, and then he'd get to the highest stage in the sport and lose to another elite team. And
Yeah.
then people were like, "Well, this guy just can't coach." No, like, do you know how hard it is with the academic restrictions and things like that to recruit talent and win at an elite level at Notre Dame in the modern day? Like,
Yeah.
that's an incredibly tall task, and the dude just
Well,
did it.
they found out this year, right?
Right, and
Like it
now he
didn't take
goes to
long.
LSU and takes over a team, I guess, that they were either 6-6 or 7-5 last year, and they're like and I mean, they're gonna play Alabama in prime time for first place in the SEC
Yep.
West. Like,
Yep.
that's what they've got coming up. So, he's winning he is winning at this sport. He's doing it the right way.
Yeah, see, I've said that for years, and I've also said I can't stand him, but I also say
Yeah,
he's a really good football coach. It goes both ways. So that's that's all the credit I want to give him. I think we'll move on to losers now, just because I don't want to be nice to Brian Kelly anymore. Unless you got some more win, you got any more winners?
no, I mean, I think just real quick, I mean, you could throw Oklahoma State on there just because I mean, just from
Yeah,
that, but
that's
we kind of hit the Big 12 in general. So,
yeah,
but yeah, just Gundy winning another big game. Who would have thought?
yeah, yeah. I just if they one of these years they're gonna not lose that one game, and they're gonna be there. I mean,
They're gonna
things
get there.
the chips could fall right, and they could still get back, but it's like, oh man, they're so close. Like
They got to win
the
out. I mean, it's that simple. You just have to win every
yeah,
single game that's on your schedule, and then see where it falls.
yeah, yeah, like you said, college football stuff. Like you got to win all your games. I'll start with losers,
You want
and
to do Clemson
again,
first?
I'll let you do
Since
Clemson.
since we both have them.
I'll let you do Clemson. My first one's going to be Texas, and here's why. They had built the momentum. I said 3 weeks ago on the show that they still had a shot to make the playoffs. Going into the game Saturday, Texas had a 40% chance to make the playoffs. Like that's where Vegas had them. Like everybody agreed with me. Everything was out there. They were going to forgive the non-Ewers games and all this. They had everything, in front of them, and then they get beat by Oklahoma State. Nothing wrong with getting beat by Oklahoma State, but when you've already got 2 losses, now going from you got an outside chance to make the playoffs to 3 losses in college football is huge. Not that I think they're a bad team or anything, but it's not a good look. I thought it was a bad day for Texas. It was out there for the taking. The incomplete passes, some mistakes, and the next thing we're looking at a 3-loss Texas team. And now it's like, not that they can't. Now they can just upset somebody. They're kind of like
Yeah.
irrelevant as far as the playoff picture
I
goes.
just think it's a different team away from Austin. Like, I really just think that's
Yeah.
what you have to say at this point, because the 2 times they've gone on the road, they've lost.
Yeah.
They won a neutral site against Oklahoma where it was probably 70% their fans. So, but when they've gone away from home, and I know Ewers was out, but they went to Texas Tech and they lost. And now, you go to Oklahoma State and you play far from your best and you lose. So until they show us that they can go on the road and win, then to me, it's just a team that you have to fear when you play them in Austin. But other than that, if you get them in your building, then you should probably win, because they haven't shown that they can win away from home yet.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I agree. It's just like, I don't know, it's just one of those, like, here you go. Like, show us what you're made of. Everybody's like giving you a benefit of the doubt, and then you lose. So,
Well, yeah, and then even I think they won in Ames, but like, or no, even no, and that Iowa State game was at home too. So no, they haven't won on the
yeah.
road.
That's what I mean. It's good points, and again, they're going to be fine. Like Ewers got a lot of growing to do. Everything's good, but it was a tough Saturday for him. So go ahead and start the. Well, we can have the Clemson conversation.
Yeah, we can do the Clemson thing because anyone with 2 eyes who watched that game, you knew as soon as A, Klubnik came in, and B, when the officials started blowing whistles, you were just like, oh, like this is over. Like Syracuse has no chance. Like they call the really soft roughing the passer on Syracuse and give Clemson a first down on a drive that ended up ending in a touchdown. and then Syracuse on 3rd and medium, their quarterback gets rocked out of
Yeah.
bounds, and they're just like,
They
no,
throw him into the first row of the stands, and it's like, that's fine.
it was like, no, it's all good. And as soon as you saw stuff like that happening, you just kind of knew. But at this point, like if Syracuse dominated Clemson up front, which I think they did,
Yep.
then what are the other teams that are going to be in the playoff going to do to Clemson? Because we already knew coming in they didn't have a good secondary. Like we've talked about it all year because teams have been able to beat them through the air. Well, if they're starting to get beat up front, then what exactly are they good at?
Yeah.
I mean, they had to switch quarterbacks. So they're not super good at that apparently.
And their coach compared their quarterback to Steph Curry. So immediately I was like, well, that's panic mode. Like you've really reached into the bottom of the barrel if you're like, all I have is like, he's like, yeah, Steph Curry has cold streaks too. I'm like, whoa. Like
but
DJ is not Steph Curry.
I was about to say, and does Steph Curry like sit out games like when he goes cold? But I mean, honestly,
no.
Like, and you know you're reaching when it's time. Like it's like, oh, like if we're gonna win this game, our starting quarterback needs to come sit with me. Like,
yeah.
So they're not particularly great at anything. They have at this point their helmet registers. So as long as they win all their games, they're gonna get in the playoff.
Yep.
But
you know what? I said it when we were talking about Oregon. I don't think that's true anymore. I think if Clemson wins out, but I think TCU, Oklahoma State, Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia with one loss can jump Clemson unless they start playing better. Like if Clemson keeps stumbling through these games in the ACC and doesn't look any better, even if they're undefeated, I do believe that they can be left out of the playoff. I know it sounds crazy.
I just always think the undefeated team will get the benefit of the doubt.
I know. Me too, but man, it's hard to. You know what? Like you said, if let's say Syracuse loses this week, okay, then that's going to go against them. And then let's say we already know Notre Dame's not great. So all these other ACC teams, kind of just like muddled up and lose a few games. Clemson's not going to have anything to stand on outside of their helmet. Like I'm with you. Like I totally get it. The benefit of the doubt. So, but I do think they can be jumped by a team that's playing really good down the stretch.
I mean, but look at the AP poll. I mean, we're still ranking TCU 6th in the AP poll, despite the fact that they beat Oklahoma and also a bunch of other ranked teams. And we're
TCU would beat Clemson by 10 Saturday, I think.
Yeah. Well, and like we even have bimbos. Like there was a newspaper reporter out of California that is such an unbiased and professional journalist that he gets an AP vote, and he put Clemson at 1 in his AP poll on Sunday.
Jesus.
And if you put Clemson at 1 in your AP poll, you deserve to have your vote taken away from you.
You should probably deserve to have your job taken away.
Because we'll see how the committee values it, but I guess we're gonna start finding out. I guess it's the first week in November, so I guess we're only about 1 week away from starting.
Yeah, we're close, but I'm with you. Like you're gonna look at Clemson. You're gonna say, what have they? The best thing they've done is just be in the ACC. Like that's it.
Yeah.
Like but the thing is though, like I would say that like about a Big Ten team, except for like Ohio State and Michigan haven't struggled. Like if Ohio State had struggled in their schedule, I would honestly have the conversation about like, yeah, they're probably overranked, but Clemson has fought through what isn't a great conference. They don't look the part, and especially like they don't have the quarterback. Like you got to have the quarterback if you're going to win in college football. I don't know how you consider a team a playoff, team or a championship contender without the quarterback. And DJ is he's just fine. Like he's just I don't know. He got benched. I don't want to say he got benched versus Syracuse.
I mean, yeah, like I don't know. And the league sucks. Like they're not going to get challenged again. I mean, and we're going to reward them and this is another case again, like from the mountaintop. another case for the expanded playoff. Because
Expand
then
it.
we don't have to have these discussions, because if they get
I'm
in,
with you.
they're going 12-0, great. We'll be in the first round.
Yeah,
And
I
then we
would.
can just move on.
No. I completely agree. Every week it
No, I
comes
meant
down
just
to.
I meant like we as a national collective can move
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Like we
No,
don't
that's what
have
I'm saying. I
yeah.
totally agree with you. Every week it comes down to we have these conversations about teams like Clemson, or sometimes it's Notre Dame or whoever. And I'm like, well, let's just open it up, the playoffs up a little bit, and we won't have to worry about Clemson taking a playoff spot, or last year Cincinnati taking a playoff spot, or blah, 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 on and on.
Right, because they'll get it, and then
They,
then they'll play, and then we'll settle it on the field. And that's
yeah,
all that needs to
I
be.
totally
And
agree.
this is the case because we're going to do the same thing this year. I think that we did. I guess it was 15, or 14. Like initially started this thing where like a one-loss TCU got sent to Atlanta and a one-loss Baylor missed the playoff. Like,
Yeah.
and so
All
we're going
because
to end
it
up doing this
only,
thing again.
yeah, only because they
We're just
didn't
going to
play
leave elite football teams out.
yeah, they didn't play a conference championship game, and the other team was Ohio State. Like they had like everything worked against them, but they were good teams that deserved a shot.
Yeah. Well, and I will go to the I've always said and I'll stand by this, that I thought TCU was the best team in the country that year with Teron Boykin and that whole group, and then they ended up going to a bowl game and playing an Ole Miss team that was not prepared to play, and they won by like 45.
Yeah, and
So,
then yeah, exactly. And that muddled everything up, because then the team that got in that everybody complained about won the national championship. Yep. So like, if Ohio State gets blown out by Alabama, which they were within seconds of doing that until they got their shit. If it wasn't for one of Lane Kiffin's worst coaching performances, that might have happened. And then it's a different world we're living in now. But thankfully, Lane Kiffin tried to run it up and kept putting the ball in the air. And
it's funny. I
won a national championship.
I was listening to a podcast today, and it was a former Alabama staffer that works with one of the media people down here in Oxford, because he also worked at Ole Miss. So there's your connection. He was working at Alabama when Ohio State and Alabama met in that game, and the Saints had a home game or something that week before that. So Ohio State was practicing at the Saints practice facility, and Alabama had been practicing in the Dome, but because the Saints had a game, they had to just stagger practice windows and basically all right, like Ohio State's going to go first, and then we'll clear out, and Alabama will go after. So a couple of the members of the Ohio State staff at some point just decided to throw their opening game script in the trash for that game, and Alabama found it. So they had every single play that Ohio State was going to run for the first 20. They had their preferred third down calls against coverages. So when they showed a coverage, they knew exactly what Ohio State was going to run, and it just didn't matter. And Ohio State, it just didn't matter. Ohio State just ran it.
Alabama. Well, that was back before Alabama valued quarterbacks like they do now. That was the game to where Saban's like, oh, okay, now we got to start scoring points, and then the rest is history. I think it's 3 or 4 championships later. It's history, but
right. I will say that there are some cracks in that facade right now. You could even hear it a little bit this week. Just Saban and I swear I'm not doing the dynasty is over. They're broken, they're done, they're not. But there are some cracks where you're just this just doesn't feel like Alabama. It just doesn't feel. This season's Alabama team does not feel like a typical Alabama team, and even Saban seems a little bit perplexed, because he got asked about the whole Jermaine Burton situation, because when he was running off the field, he have you seen the video of that? Yeah. Well, they asked him about it. And Saban went out of his way to defend his player, and it was just one of those things where it was it just feels like Saban, who is so calculated and knows exactly what to say in all situations. It just doesn't feel like the calculation is there as much as it used to be. And I don't know that means he's lost a step, or if this team just has him really frustrated, but it does feel like there's some cracks in the facade.
I think some of it is they had to adjust too, because they were, at the top of the mountain, all the advantages, everything. And I think the transfer portal and the NIL stuff, like it didn't, since it didn't benefit them, it only took away. So like they didn't have a there's nothing to counteract it for them. You know what I mean? It only made everybody else rise up, and it didn't benefit them. So I honestly think that stuff has been a bit of a factor as far as evening out the playing field a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely could be. I mean,
Because they already
guys
had
out of the
all the
portal,
best
but I mean,
players. You know what I mean? They couldn't get any more. They
yeah,
couldn't get any more players. So all they could do, it could only bring everybody closer to their level rather than, raise them up.
yeah. I mean, that's absolutely true, and
And I could be
we'll see where
crazy.
they go from here. They got a big one. They got a big one, and they have a, a massive, massive game in 2 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. And they're
So
still a very good team. Like I keep saying that. Like they're still a very good team. I'm on record for saying
yeah,
if they would have played Ohio State Saturday, I think Alabama beats Ohio State this past Saturday. Like that's like, I mean, I'm not sitting here saying Alabama's terrible. I just like they're just
right.
if they might be 10% down from what they were. Another loser I had, just to jump on it. You talked about it. You had the other side of it earlier. Texas A&M, just again,
Mhm.
like just can't right the ship. You're supposed to have all this, all the talk in the offseason. South Carolina was better, from start to finish. So I just put them in there as like just another week of, kind of being embarrassed.
Feels like the only thing keeping Jimbo employed is his act, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like the only thing keeping him there is the fact that they can't afford to pay him on almost $100 million to
Yeah.
leave.
Yeah. They basically, I think I forget when they do the breakdown, like they got to keep him for a couple more years before it even makes sense to
It's a
fire
while,
him.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's a while, and, and I mean, they're young, but still, when you have that many good players, I don't really care how old they are. Like, if you had recruited on a similar level to a lot of other teams and all your players were young and theirs were 2 years older than you, I'd be like, "Alright, cool." South Carolina did not have
No.
35 stars on Saturday. They did not actually probably have more than, like, 1 5-star on Saturday.
Right.
And they're just as young because it's a blossoming program. They're just as young, way more inexperienced in terms of big games, and they just simply outplayed them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
And
I don't know what the
that's
answer is.
that's the that's like the fourth or fifth time that a team has outplayed A&M this year, though. Like it starts to become a pattern. It's not even an upset at this point. It's like you're getting outplayed on almost every facet of the game, week in and week out.
Well, and, like, they may not even make a bowl game. I mean, if you look at the rest of their schedule, like, I mean, it's not a guarantee. I mean, they're 3-4. They host Ole Miss this week. They host
I mean,
Florida next.
3-4. Texas A&M is 3-4. Them and Notre
They haven't
Dame
won a
are
game in a month. They have not. Their last win was a month from today. And the reason they won that game is because Arkansas's kicker kicked the ball off the top of the upright. They didn't even outplay them. The
that's
kicker just
true.
missed.
But yet the other side of it is they should have beat Alabama. Like,
True.
but I'm
Well,
saying
I
like
mean, even then, it's
I
like you
mean,
had
I
your
shouldn't
chance.
say they should have, but like they should have lost to Arkansas, but in the same tone, they could
Here's
have
my
beat
argument on
Alabama and still be 3-4. And
my argument on that. The Alabama game was at least on their racket. That was in their hands. Execute it. The Arkansas kicker, that's not in their hands. There's nothing they can do. You gave up the
that's
yards.
fair.
They did exactly what they wanted to do and got exactly where they wanted to get to. The kicker just missed in a way that I have never seen in my life, which is off the top of the upright, not
Oh
the top.
no,
And
the top. It doesn't even.
so
Yeah, that
yeah,
was a
they're
bad one.
fortunate. They're fortunate not to be 2-5.
Yeah, they could
They're
easily be three
fortunate
and
not to
five.
be 2-5.
Wow.
Yeah, and so then you host Ole Miss, host Florida, and then you go to Auburn, and then you have UMass, and then you host LSU. Like, there's one
Yeah,
win. There's one guaranteed win left in the schedule.
that's it at best.
There's one
So
guaranteed win
you know
left on
what?
that schedule.
Good for them. Couldn't happen to a nicer program. Another loser I put on here.
They are legitimately, like, I used to have a real I was gonna say they're the worst. Like, they deserve more, failure than just absolutely anybody.
Yeah, I agree. Another one I put on my losers bracket. And it like I know that they're bad and they played a good Ohio State team, but I mean, come on, at some point, Kirk Ferentz, like this, some of this has to stick to him. Like you're you're getting paid very well to be a head coach, and your team is one of the worst teams in college football. Like there's very few teams that you could be averaging 9 points a game. It's probably not even that now since they could barely score last week. Kurt Ferentz, that was a bad Saturday, bad season. Some of this has to start sticking to him at some point.
Yeah, I mean, he danced around nepotism laws to hire his son as the offensive coordinator. So when you
Yeah,
do stuff like that, and then you have one of the worst offenses in football, that's probably going to stick.
it's
I mean,
so
that's just one of
bad.
those things
It's the
where,
worst offense that I've watched this year. And I mean, I'm talking, if any team I've watched, it is abysmal how bad that offense is.
yeah, no, I mean, it's horrible. It is absolutely atrocious on every level. On every level.
So,
So,
what other losers you got? I know you got to have some more in there.
um, I'm trying to think of who I already hit. Oh, well, yeah, yeah, yeah. I do feel for Kansas State. Like, I had them in my losers column because you have an 18-point lead on the road with a chance to knock off an undefeated team and
Yeah.
claim your spot atop the Big 12 as a one-loss team, but undefeated in conference play, and really almost because the winner of that game kind of they didn't clinch, but with the way the schedules are,
Yeah.
they're more likely than TCU is now to go to the Big 12 championship, and that was all in Kansas State's hands there. And just starting in that middle eight, you just kind of throw it away. So I did feel for them. They were in my losers column. They have to turn around and play Gundy this week, so good luck. But weird shit happens in Manhattan, Kansas. So, um, that was all on the racket. They were in my losers. The college football playoff was still technically within reach for them. I mean, you went out and finished as a 12-1 Big 12 champ, and you're going to be right there. You're going to be up in the middle of it.
Yep.
So I did feel for them. But yeah, they're in my losers column as well.
Yeah. 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 That was a tough one. It's fun to watch them. I kind of pull for them every week just because they're, fun to watch. But yeah, everything you just said, I mean, kind of nailed it. All right. So we'll move on to what we learned this week before we get out of here. Here's what I learned this week: the transfer portal, I've said it before, is absolutely completely 180 changed college football. I was watching, I tweeted this out. I was watching the afternoon slate. There was 3 big games on. 5 of the quarterbacks had been through the transfer portal out of 6 teams, and I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa! You had I think you got Martinez for Kansas State. You got it just Bo Nix, Oregon. Like all these teams that are really good. LSU with Jaden. Like it's just
Ole Miss
on
had
it.
Dart.
Yeah, Dart Jackson. Dart. It's just it's crazy. Throw South Carolina in there if you want. It's just on and on. Like you look across the country and these teams playing. I'm like, it is amazing. Quinn Ewers technically went through the transfer portal, even though we all knew it was going to happen that way. But still, that's he
Right.
did go through the train. Yeah, I mean he took the long way to get to Texas, but still, without the transfer portal, he couldn't have manipulated it, quite like he did. No shade. Like he's in the right spot, but I just started looking. I was like, wow, once you spread all these quarterbacks out, it's amazing that we have this many good teams at the top. So it just, my takeaway from the week was like, man, that has changed college football more than anything I've seen in my lifetime, more than the playoffs, more than the BCS, more than the NIL. The transfer portal is just kind of helped even the playing field more than anything else I've ever seen.
Yeah, I agree, and that's actually funny because it's like that kind of like I'll piggyback because like for me, every single week I've done the same thing over again, and this week just kind of reemphasized that this is the deepest in terms of number of quality teams that college football has
Yeah.
had in my lifetime. I mean, like we're to the point now where like we used to talk about how watered down five rankings would be because like basically teams 15 through 25 didn't matter. They were the same as teams 30 through
Yep.
50. Um, and in a sense, that's still true, but now it's true because teams like 15 through 50 are all super, super good. And there's just no more free weekends in the sport, which makes it better because we we talk about wanting to make it feel like the season's longer and like we want to enjoy more football. And the way to do that is to have more quality games. And so I think with you mentioned the portal, I think NIL is going to factor. The playoff is certainly a factor into this. We're just going to continue to see programs build and be able to sustain success, unlike kind of the past. And so I just think that for the sport, that's such a positive. And I think that, it's something I seem to learn every week. Like, I mean, I talked about South Carolina earlier, where you watch and you're just like this team's really good. Like this team
Yeah.
does a lot of little things well. They're not as talented as a lot of the teams they're playing, but they're super good on special teams. They return kicks, they block kicks, they do all this stuff. They play really good defense. They're well coached. And like so you get a lot of these different styles of teams that are all uniquely good and similar in all of their own ways. And I think that's going to create the parity that I think people seek and desire in college football. And I seemingly learn about new teams and like just new brands every single week by watching the sport.
Yeah, yeah, it's been cool, especially like, the Big 12 like being deep, Pac-12, being deep, the SEC, like we really honestly don't know. Like there's five different teams that could win the SEC, which is just incredible, to wrap your head around. We've already talked about like, yeah, let's go ahead and just add some more playoff teams because of all these reasons. But so okay, let's
Well,
talk
and then
about what.
even in the G5, we're seeing better football teams now. Like Tulane. Tulane's 7-1, ranked in the AP top 25,
It's
has
a
a road
good
win against
football team.
a good team. They were up 35 to nothing at halftime on Saturday. I was just like, wow, like now that's how you make a statement and like you finally get ranked. I think it's their first game ranked since 1995. Now that's how you come out and perform when you do something like that. So I mean, yeah, it's impacted the game top to bottom. It's incredible to watch.
Absolutely. Now, it's not a, I mean, we don't know how it's going to go. Like on paper, it's not a flashy week 9, but who are you watching this week?
Oh God, give me a second. I don't. I it's a lot of times when my team loses, I
Ohio
have to do
State,
this.
Penn State, like is kind of a given. Like that's a rivalry. Like stuff happens in those
Yeah,
games. It's a great noon
it's a
game.
good one. I'll be in on Oklahoma State, Kansas State.
Yeah, I
I'll be in on
assumed.
that. That'll be fun. And then I'll also well, and then the big one for me is I'll be in on Kentucky, Tennessee at Neyland.
Oh yeah,
Big rivalry game in the SEC, prime time. Yeah, Herbie and Fowler on the call. I think there's still some stuff with Tennessee, like weakness wise, that maybe got covered up by the fact that they won, and both teams basically had bye weeks. Kentucky had an actual bye week, and Tennessee played UT Martin. So
yeah.
they're both going to be like, both of them are going to have had 2 weeks to prepare for each other. Let's just put it that way. And so, like, we're going to get both coaches' best shots. And, like, I think Mark Stoops will have a really good game plan for how to handle that type of offense. And I don't know. And, like, I don't think Kentucky has the horses to pull it off. But I think Kentucky is going to go in there and be super competitive and be able to score points at that. So, and they've got a running back named by the name of Chris Rodriguez, where if Kentucky gets into
Yeah.
their game plan and can really settle in and let him work, like that's the type of thing where they can really shorten this type of game. And that plays into Kentucky's hands because Tennessee's tempo is going to it's going to lean into Kentucky's offense being on field for more of the game. And Kentucky could really wear Tennessee down over the course of 4 quarters if they can establish that running game. This is
What?
definitely not who Tennessee wanted to play the week before they played Georgia. That is not who they wanted to play.
No, that's a great point. And I've always said that about these high octane offenses because I see it with the high state a lot. I'm like, these offenses are awesome when they move like this, but they also put their they put their defense on the field a lot. Even when they're successful, your defense is just always on the field. And that's when you start getting you can kind of get beaten up a little, broke down a little, it can work against you sometimes. Like I think that's a very interesting matchup. Obviously, I'm solely focused on Ohio State, Penn State, just because.
Also, just weird. Also, weird, crazy stuff happens when Herbie and Fowler are calling games. That's when all the cool stuff happens. So,
Oh yeah, no, that's a perfect night. I always watch Florida Georgia. I just
yeah,
that's one of my favorite big games. The cocktail party, the whole deal. I always like that. I don't. This is one of the few years. Not, I shouldn't say one of the few years, but I don't see Florida having a chance in this episode of it. But I will be paying attention to it, and I will enjoy it. I'll keep my eye on Ole Miss,
I
Texas
think Georgia
A&M.
is figuring out who they are. I think they've somewhat figured it out, and I think that people should probably be a little bit afraid. I've kind of seen it
Okay.
I think that they're starting to click, and it's if they
Yeah.
can if they come in, and we'll start talking about it next week, if they beat Florida the way that they theoretically could beat Florida, I think they may hang 40 and Florida may not score double
Yeah.
digits. I think we're maybe looking at 30-point win type deal here. And if that happens, we'll start talking. Well, people will start talking about it.
Yeah, I agree. And like I say, it's not a flashy slate, but when you get this deep in the season, all these games like Michigan State, Michigan looks like a no-brainer. But
Mhm.
I've also seen this game turn into I've seen some weird stuff happen in that game. UNC Pittsburgh's probably going to be a fun game to watch. Um, it's just it's one of those things where people are just going to be talking about the next day, like, wow, that was crazy. 7 touchdowns from each team or whatever. Shit like that's going to happen. Illinois, kind of just watching Illinois now to see how
Yeah.
good they can be. They play Nebraska, they ought to run through them. So how far can they push this thing? Like there's some storylines at play, and then of course anything can happen in these games. So that's a it's
Also
gonna.
a testament to how good coaches always adapt and never fail to adapt. Adapt or die is a true saying. And Brett Bielema went to Arkansas and failed by their standards, and is now at Illinois and has them on the verge of a 9 or 10
Yeah,
type win season.
they're a quality team right now, like instantly too.
Yeah, and if you watch his teams play at Illinois and if you go back and watch his team play at Arkansas, they're not the same. They're not the same type of
No,
teams. They're not the same. It's not these big tight ends and fullbacks and all of this stuff and 7'1", 400-pound offensive lineman like he had at Arkansas. And he's got they have athletes. They're running kind of a spread offense. It's a different team. And so,
yeah,
adapt or die. And Brett decided to adapt.
yeah, good for him. I mean, I don't care for the dude, because of his years at Wisconsin and all that. But I don't I don't root against him. Again, I can watch the team and be like, every time I watch him, I'm like, man, he's done a really nice job with this team. It's pretty
Right.
impressive. Who knows? High State may get a shot at him here in a month. So
Wouldn't that be something to watch win a Big Ten championship?
I mean, it's out there. I mean, it's a strong
It's a
possibility
thing. It's definitely a thing.
that they're
It
gonna
is definitely out there.
win. That they're gonna win their side of it. So, all right, man. I appreciate you coming on. That was awesome. I'm getting rid of my banner here. I always do that. Walker, you guys doing Field Stormers this week?
Yeah, Wednesday. We're back. We were on Friday last week. We'll be back Wednesday this week. Some
Sweet.
real life kind of just moves the days around. But we'll be back Wednesday, and we'll look at week 9. I think we'll take kind of more of a more expanded look at week 8, especially given the
Yeah,
slate of week 9, and then just some other stuff. We're getting close to coaching carousel season, which will make really good podcast talk, because we'll start getting
absolutely.
rumors, we'll start getting job openings, we'll start looking at candidates, stuff like that, which will be really good podcast stuff. So we're excited about that. And then check out I've got some stuff up at offtheballnetwork.com. Wrote some baseball stuff today. Chris Bolton and I are bringing back One Shining Pod for college basketball. It's basically going
Oh,
to be similar to
nice.
Field Stormers in the sense that it'll be 1 week on Wednesdays. We're probably going to get started. I think the soft tentative date that we've talked about is Wednesday, I think November the 2nd, in terms of coming back. That's the Wednesday before the season starts. So we'll be back soon with that. And then just everything else at offtheballnetwork.com. Just there's so much stuff going on and so many good people doing so much good work over there. So go check it all out. You can follow me on Twitter at Walker Bailey 818. I think that's it. I think I covered everything.
No, that's perfect, man. You're a busy guy right now. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you doing this. Everybody, go check out Field Stormers. That's one of the newer podcasts that Walker's got going on. Much more expansive, college football podcast even to what we're doing. And then, like he said, go to Off the Ball Network and check out everything they're doing. I'm Jeff from Jeff Needs Sports. You can find me everywhere you get your podcast. Thanks for any likes, shares, reviews, anything you can do. For Walker, from me, we thank you, and we're out.